So I was like, okay, like you got to figure something else out. And part of what inspired me to go to law school was realizing how much they didn't pay women golfers. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll go and I'll represent some women golfers. I'll go and I'll be lawyers or attorneys and do these deals for women golfers. So let me go to law school. But that was a late decision for someone who wants to go to law school.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Working Title Female Podcast. Today we have Shamira joining us, a software engineer who played in the LPGQ school and a MAC tournament all-team selection. She is a former player on the Kent State women's golf team and also has a JD in law from Loyola. Please welcome Shamira.
Mhm.
Okay, tell me about your childhood and how you picked up the sport.
Okay, so I will say, so what got me into golf is my grandmother. My grandmother was watching Tiger Woods play on TV, and she was like, oh, maybe Shamira can do that. So she told my dad about it, and he started getting me lessons. Like, nobody in my family plays. They learned about it through watching Tiger Woods. And they're like, okay, like we see somebody that looks like her. Maybe she can do it too. So that's how I got into golf, was my grandma's initial interest. And then my dad kind of took it from there and got me lessons and got me introduced to the sport, and I learned more.
So why did you stick it out? I saw on your bio you actually played basketball too.
I did like junior leagues and rec leagues and stuff. So I played in through freshman year of high school. So yeah, I joined some competitive leagues, but it wasn't that serious. And then I just really loved golf. So I kind of stuck with golf because I started going and playing and I really enjoyed it.
So off topic a little bit, the golf scene in the Midwest is very casual and kind of gets more and more competitive as you grow older. Can you kind of share a little bit about your experience, what it's like growing in the Midwest and playing golf from junior years and then all the way, talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so I guess it is pretty casual. And also, we didn't know much about like this tournament scene or getting into junior golf. So I just started playing in local tournaments, which were more casual at the municipal courses around Cleveland. And then it kind of grew from there once I became more competitive. And we just had to research and kind of learn about and find out about other tournaments in different states or more national tournaments, like AJGA and stuff like that. So I guess I would say, yeah, it was definitely more casual. And then once I started becoming more competitive, was when it got a little bit more serious, or when I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to go to college for this and I want to get a scholarship. That's when we started taking it more serious and going and traveling for tournaments. But for a while, I would say through like middle school, so I guess through like 13, 14, I was playing mostly local tournaments and traveling around different parts of Ohio. And then once I hit high school and 14 plus, trying to get scouted by different college coaches, that's when I started traveling for like AJGA tournaments or what's the other one? Ooh, the other like junior
FCWT, IJGT.
Yes,
No.
all of those tournaments.
Hashtag
Yeah, I
gold.
forget all the acronyms, but all the ones where the college coaches are actually going to look for golfers. I didn't do that until I guess a little bit later.
What's a little later? What age were you? Do you remember?
I would say 14, 15. If you're starting school at, I graduated high school at 17. So I would say freshman, sophomore year, which to me is a little bit later. If you're trying to start getting looks, like I wasn't really getting those looks until I was in high school or a couple years before I actually was going to start college.
So what does municipal mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. So municipal, when I say municipal, I mean like our local golf course, our
Okay.
local public course where you go and, it's anybody can play. So I was playing tournaments around the local courses in the area.
Okay. And then eventually you just really enjoyed the game and just continue to pick it up and you knew. So how did you know you want to play college golf?
So I knew because when I was 13, I went to Ohio State's summer golf camp. And at that summer golf camp, they had a lot of the current players were coaches or teachers of the junior golfers. And we got to stay in the dorms and everything. And I was like, oh, so this is what I would do as a college golfer. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to play golf in college. And it was that summer camp.
Wow, actually, I didn't know about that because you said Ohio State. My blood boiled a bit, but
Right. Miss
can't help
Michigan.
it a little bit. But that's awesome because Michigan has some kind of summer camp too. We would volunteer and come help out, but never really knew what it was for. But I had like a 360 when I heard your story. I was like, so that's how they knew college golf. I came from Indo in 2005, the early, like before 2010 below, right? And we didn't have college golf. In fact, I didn't even know you could go to college with golf. We only had like, you have to turn pro. That's it. But I was like, college? What's, you could get paid? And then of course that was awesome, right? And then obviously the kids at IMG, and actually Shamira and I met while we were both in IMG.
Oh, are we telling this IMG how we met story?
And we met at IMG and became friends through golf. And then
I'm
from
going to tell
golf,
the story. I know you're
go
the
for it.
host.
How did we meet, Shamira?
Okay, so the story of how Caribbean and I met, I took a winter. My dad sent me to IMG Academy for a couple weeks in the winter because I'm from the Midwest. So it's snowing all the time and there's not really a place where you can hit on grass. You have to travel for that. So he sent me to IMG Academy for a couple weeks and I didn't know anybody. I was what they call a short timer there. So I
Oh,
was,
yeah,
they
labels
called
for
them short timers. So they had labels for the people that were like, you don't really go here. You're just visiting. So I was a short timer and I was like new, didn't know anybody there. And we were traveling to the golf course. So we were all on the bus and I was kind of sitting by myself, just chilling. And then I'm like, you hear something. I'm like, okay, they're having fun. And I hear this girl come on the bus and she just plops down right next to me. And she's like, oh, can I sit next to you? And I'm like, sure. And it was Karamia. And the rest is history. We've been friends ever since. We've been really close friends since. And I was 16. Yeah, when we met.
I was 15. So I just thought like, hey, you're a new friend. Let me get to know you.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, I think, the beauty of sports, right? You meet people and you kind of share all the ups and downs of amateur. You went on to playing second round Q school, whoop a lot of butt on the process. And I've been cheering you on because I knew that you wanted to turn pro. I knew I wasn't good enough. So I was like,
Bye.
bye. Well, okay. So we took a little step forward, and yeah, I mean, our friendship is something that I'm forever grateful for golf. If I didn't meet you at the bus, I don't know if we would have been friends.
Yeah,
So
we probably
thank
would
you, Yellow
have.
School Bus.
Probably not because you playing for Michigan and then we were always competing in the same tournaments. So yeah,
Nah.
thank goodness for that IMG David Ledbetter bus.
Yeah, I know. We used to go on those school buses, and they know IMG kids were coming. Okay, so you went on to play for Kent State. What was the process for you? Why did you choose Kent State? What was it like? Because I knew you mentioned Ohio State.
Yeah, so it was, I guess, the story of why I chose Kent State. I gotta think. It was a long time ago.
I know, I know. I'm sorry. You had to like dig it all from the back of your mind.
Right? Like dust off the cobwebs. Let me start remembering. Okay, so I guess that part or like even trying to get offers and stuff was a little stressful until you
Yeah.
start getting the first one. Because it's like, okay, I'm playing in this tournament or I'm playing in all these tournaments. Like I'm wondering, are these coaches seeing me? Are they interested? And then you start getting letters and then you start getting like phone calls and stuff and you see who's more interested. And my dad started talking with different coaches and they started actually coming to my tournaments. I'm like, oh, this coach is from this school and they're watching me play. Let me hit the ball in the green. Let me not three putt. But okay, so how did I decide on Kent State? I really like the coach. So the coach is Mike Morrow. And we had a great connection. And he's just an awesome guy, really great. I knew I was going to be safe with him and good with him. Like I knew he was going to help me grow my golf game, but I also knew that I would have a pretty cool experience. Kent State was close to home and I guess kind of a homebody, or at least I was then. I didn't want to travel too far from my parents, but I still wanted the full college experience. So I didn't want to commute and go to school, but I wanted to be a close drive from them. So that's how I chose Kent State. I like the coach. The team was great. nationally ranked and played in all of the top tournaments, and I was close to home. So it was a win-win.
Okay, I'll throw a curveball here. What's the worst hole that you had when a coach was watching you before you committed?
Ooh, before I committed, I blocked those memories out. I'm like,
Okay. It could
those
be
are
before or
blocked.
after because I remember mine because it was so bad.
I do remember, so I don't remember pre going to Kent, the worst hole, but I do remember post going to Kent.
Okay,
We
go for it.
played in a tournament in Georgia. It was like a really cool match style play. So the team, I'm trying to think, like all of our scores, like we were all playing together as a team, which was unique. And I was doing really well. And I was going to shoot in the 60s, and something happened where I ended up like water twice on one of the last. I remember they update every 3 holes. Like, so in that span before the last 3 holes, I ended up getting like an 8 or a 9. And I'm like, what happened? That was wild. And I was playing with my team. So like my whole team saw me like go in the water again, and do whatever, because you got to do a lot to get like an 8 or a 9. And I did all of that. So that was my worst hole ever. And I was like so excited because I was going to shoot in the 60s. And then I ended up shooting like a 74, 75 because of one hole. So
What was your team's reaction? Do you remember?
I probably blocked that out too. Like I'm trying to think. They're probably like, oh my gosh, rolling their eyes and looking away, because that's tough to watch when you
Yeah,
see
that's
somebody
tough to
like
watch.
crashing out. When you see somebody really struggling, it's like it's hard to watch other people do that. So I'm sure their reactions were similar. Like, ooh, this is tough to watch because you don't want to see somebody do that.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I don't know. I find humor in all the crappy things I went to now. I think I just have a better sense of humor after being an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
I
now.
remember right? I forgot which coach, or I think I blocked it out. She didn't email me, but I knew she was watching me. We were playing in Doral, I remember that. And I hit a good drive, but I pulled it out of it straight in the middle of the water. First shot. Second shot. Also did the same. And after that, start walking. I think I had like an 8 or something like that. Same story. College just brings the most interesting part of you out. I'll tell you that.
It brings out the nerves for sure. Or like, I don't know. It's like, wow, how did I do that? Like, how did the ball go completely sideways? Like, I remember one time, I think I was playing with Michigan, and we were in Puerto Rico, and I
Oh.
shanked the mess out of the ball. Like, and this was on a chip, and it literally went sideways, and I had to tell the girl watching me, be like, look out. Like, I almost hit her. Yeah, so that's another crazy shot. Shots I'll never forget that I haven't completely blocked out is literally almost hitting the girl that was in parallel with me because I shanked the ball so bad.
I think I know which tournament because we were hanging out after the tournament. We played in Puerto Rico, and I don't remember what you said, but I remember laughing with you.
Literally, like she had to jump out the way. It was wild. I'm trying to think. What's another one? Okay, now I do remember. So there was a tournament pre-Kent. So one of my first bigger junior tournaments. It was like the biggest tournament in our area. And I remember going with my dad to practice this course. And, I'd done all this prep and all this practice getting ready for this tournament. And my first shot, my swing coach was watching me. Like I had family watching me. I was maybe 12, 13. And my first shot off the tee, like basically went out of bounds. Like I hit the fence. It was wild, almost whipped it off the tee. And then I recovered and I came in third for that tournament. But that was not great.
You know what's funny? I always remember the first tee jitters. I remember, like, I don't know about you, but no matter how confident I am in playing for that tournament, I always still had that, like, the butterfly, and like I still remember that feeling. Do you still have things that you kind of still bring to this day?
Yeah, the nerves of like where you have to, I guess, first tee jitters. Yes, I still get them. Like even at work, when I have to do a presentation or something, I'll get the same feeling as first tee jitters. Or if you're presenting in front of a ton of people, or if something is more high stakes or something is about to go where a bunch of people are about to see, I'll definitely get that same feeling, the butterflies.
I still have nightmares of missing the first tee.
Yeah, being late.
Being late.
And then You get so nervous, you get there like hours before, and it's like, okay, now I'm about to be tired because I'm here so early, warming up like 2, 3 hours before, all because I'm so nervous for the first tea.
Oh yeah. I still get nightmares. I don't know. It just stays. Okay. So you committed to Kent State. Do you remember some things that you learned in college that still stays with you now? Now that we're well over after our college playing days.
Well over. That makes us sound so old when you say well over. But
We're not like that, but
we're in a happy medium spot, okay?
okay, I'll take
Let's
that.
see. So you're saying some of my best lessons from college,
Yeah.
or like main takeaways?
What did you take from playing for Kent State, that experience?
Hmm. So I took a lot away, but I would say some of the most important things, it was interesting. So I learned how to, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit because golf is interesting as a team sport.
Oh
Because
yeah.
golf is an individual sport, but then when you play for a school, you're also on a team. And that's something that I had to learn throughout my time at Kent State. It's like, okay, we want to do great individually, but then you're also rooting for your other teammates, even though you're competing, I guess, against them. Like you're competing, you all want a spot, you're competing for a spot to go to the tournament. So I think that's a lesson. Like I learned that you can still be excited and like happy for other people while wanting to do your best as well. So that was a great lesson that I learned.
I remember, well, I think you're better at this than I was because I was overly competitive. Like although I'm happy for my teammates, there's still a part of me that judge myself for not playing well. And then I overcompensate by being a perfectionist in school and etc. I was always type A, but looking back and I'm like, I played so bad. Like I judge myself way too hard. That's something that I think would have made my experience a lot better. But what about after college? So about your transition to trying to turn pro. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was interesting because I was like hyper focused on playing golf. Like I always wanted to be, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go professional. I didn't really see anything outside of golf. Like that's what I wanted to do. So I'm like, okay, well, why not get your feet wet and start going to Q school? And I went to Q school before my senior year. So I tried it out just to see what would happen. And that was interesting because I had some teammates that had graduated and I saw, that they were all out going to Q school trying their best. So I'm like, okay, let me give it a shot. Let me see if this is the type of life that, I've been looking forward to it, but I hadn't actually done it. So let me see if this is something that I really want to do and make sure. So I did that. And honestly, what kind of deterred me from going pro after that is a couple things. The cost. It's one of those things where you need money and you need sponsorship. And as someone who doesn't, like, I don't really come from money or not the type of money where my family can spend thousands of dollars because golf is very expensive and competitive golf is extra expensive. Junior golf is fine and I'm grateful for all of that. But I kind of took for granted that when I got to Kent State, they were paying for everything. So like part of my scholarship, like, they cover my clubs, all the practice that I wanted to do, all the
Books.
range balls, all of the things I needed to get better, like nutritionists and trainers and things like that and travel, that was all covered. So having to do that for myself, I'm like, oh, this is so expensive. It's not affordable for, um, middle class or people working regular jobs. It just isn't. So I saw that and I saw how tough it would be to even just try to get going. And that's a lot of pressure when it's like, okay, I'm literally like, I have to perform well to make it to the next tournament or to afford my basic expenses to train and do well. So that kind of deterred me like, oh, okay, this is a little different when you have to fund everything yourself.
How was it looking for sponsors when you're going through that phase?
Yeah, so I didn't really look for sponsors.
Okay,
And I
interesting.
think, thinking back now, I'm like, I didn't look for sponsors, one, because I was a junior. So I was still technically an amateur and I couldn't take any money. The rules were different back then. Like amateur golfers and NCAA golfers, you couldn't get any type of
Yep.
help. Now I probably would have stuck it out a little longer because then I could have that would have been an option for me, but then it was not.
how was the transition from that decision to going back to school? Because you did so well in college, you obviously are good enough to go to Q school, and then you decided to take a JD.
Yeah, so that was interesting because after that happened in my junior year, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to go pro, which is a complete 180 from like I was so focused on golf and that's all I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to make my profession. So I was like, okay, like you got to figure something else out. And part of what inspired me to go to law school was realizing how much they didn't pay women golfers. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll go and I'll represent some women golfers. I'll go and I'll be lawyers or attorneys and do these deals for women golfers. So let me go to law school. But that was a late decision for someone who wants to go to law school. I hadn't studied for the LSAT or taken the LSAT, and that's something you have to take. So the LSAT is the score you need to get into law school. Like you use it when you apply. That's the test you take to get into that type of graduate school. So I hadn't decided until my junior year. And then I was so focused on golf. Like my major was sports administration. Like I was not focused on school at all. Like I was like, okay, let me take this class and get it out the way. Academics were not my focus. So I'm like, ooh, academics have to be my focus now. So I ended up taking a gap year where between undergrad and law school, where I studied for the LSAT, and took the LSAT, and then I taught golf to make some money. I worked at a country club where I helped out with some junior golf camps and, worked in the clubhouse while I was like studying and trying to like make this switch to academics.
I remembered when we had, conversations in all both of our transitions from golf to professional life, how hard it was for you, how hard you studied for the test. And it wasn't short. It was like months.
Yeah, it took a couple months. And also like because it's hard to say because I'm like I was not focused on school. So I had to train my brain to like go and sit for hours and just sit and look at things and try to do these logic games and these reading comprehension tests and all of that. So yeah, it took some time to train my brain to work that way.
So, how long of a process was it to get your JD from golf?
Yeah, well, okay, so getting your JD is 3 years. Law school is 3 years. So in the US, like you need an undergraduate degree and then you go to law school for 3 years.
So, if I get the scheduling right, you focus on getting turned professional in junior year. You realized also in junior year that this wasn't something you want to do professionally after seeing all the costs and stuff. And then obviously because of the sponsorship during college and stuff. And then you started working towards a JD in your senior year and starting with the gap year. So around 4 or 5 years of.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Oh wow, I guess it was that long
It
to
wasn't
switch
short.
from like I want to play golf to like okay, this is a new profession. Okay, yeah.
I remember some of the conversations. It was like both of us were experimenting, right? I transitioned from being a student athlete into a fashion designer, completely not even picking up clubs. You still had, country clubs and stuff. I was just completely burnt out.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember talking to you and your life in New York and living in the city and going
Yeah.
over and you went to school. Like I remember your transition of
Mhm.
going to fashion school in New York and then all the great jobs you had there and all the late nights and all the portfolio things. I'm going to get the terminology wrong, but I definitely remember that. You getting your portfolio together and working as well. You were doing a lot.
Unpaid internships. And then back then, we weren't allowed to bring iPads like we are now or clouds. So I had physical, I kid you not, 30 to 40 pound bags of my stuff, which I still have in my room, of thick portfolios of my sketches and what we call like croquis, like, for your silhouettes and swatches that I spent hundreds of dollars to make. Till this day, if
Wow.
I totaled the amount of money I spent on the printers, I think I could start a business. It's
That's
so
wow.
expensive. It was worth it, but it was also painful. So, okay. So you got your GD. What happened next?
So I got my JD. And then I decided, well, okay, I have a trend that now that I'm thinking about it, there's a trend of like right before I'm supposed to be done with something, like right before I was going to graduate undergrad, I'm like, maybe I don't want to play golf. I'm going to go to law school. Right before I was going to graduate law school, I'm like, maybe I don't want to be a lawyer. This isn't what I thought this was going to be. Like, what else am I interested in? Law school is 3 years. So the second year of law school, I realized that I didn't want to practice, but I'm like, okay, well, you got to finish. And the way student loans are set up, you got to see it through and at least try to practice for a little bit. So I knew then that I probably wasn't going to be a traditional lawyer. And I was kind of going the IP route, so the intellectual property route with copyrights and trademarks and things like that. In one of my IP law classes, I learned about a case where they were dealing with APIs. The API stands for Application Program Interface, but it's something that software does to communicate to each other. But there was an API case, and I was kind of interested in that. And then I did more digging about, okay, what's an API? And I stumbled across coding and like different things like that. So I'm like, oh, let me play around with that with these free coding websites. And I started going to different meetups in the city for coding and people wanting to learn how to code. So that was while I was in law school. But I'm like, okay, you're going to finish and you're going to do the traditional law job. You're going to give it a shot. So I got like a traditional law job. And I knew pretty early on, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is definitely not something I see myself having a full career in and working decades in. So how am I going to switch to tech and like coding and things like that full time? You know how you're over a job is when you're at the job, like Googling like other places, like you're looking up, how do I leave? How do I do this other thing?
I agree.
So I was doing that at a job that should not be named. And I found this boot camp, this coding boot camp that was based in Seattle called Ada Developers Academy, where it's like a 11-month long program where half of it is 9 to 5 full-time instruction and you're making projects and you're um, learning how to code. And then the other half is a full-time internship at a tech company. At the time, it was only, you had to be in person. So you had to be in Seattle to do it. But yeah, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Okay, like let me apply for this. So I ended up applying for that program. I got into that program, moved to Seattle, went through that program, and ended up at a software engineer intern at a company in Seattle. And then I converted from intern to a full time engineer. And that's how I got into tech.
I mean, hearing your story, that's already three lifetimes. You know, you got a golfer, you got a lawyer, and then now you are in tech. If that's not grit and perseverance, I don't know what else to say about that transition. All in the span of 6 years, right? Because you
Yeah.
practiced and then you
So,
transitioned for 11 months, you said.
yep.
What made you keep going to pursue coding? You could have just said, no, I'm going to stick it out in tech. I mean, I'm going to stick it out in law.
Yeah. So I guess because now that we're talking about it, I feel like if I'm always like, I work hard. I usually, if I set a goal, like, okay, this is something I'm going to do, I work hard enough and like try to adapt to meet that goal. But I'm like, okay, if I'm going to work hard, why would I work hard for something that I don't necessarily like or, something I don't really want to do, or I'm not for sure that I'm going to, love it, or like, okay, I'm putting in these hours, I'm willing to sacrifice these things. I at least have to like the thing that I'm working towards. So once it becomes, I guess, when the sacrifice isn't worth it for me, okay, this is something I don't find joy in doing anymore, I'll pivot, which I don't know. I don't know if I can say that's a good or a bad thing, but it is like if you're going to have to do the hard work anyway, why be stuck doing something, or why be miserable in what you have to do? Like working hard is not always fun. Sacrificing things like going out, or sacrificing hanging out with friends, sacrificing your time, sacrificing your money, that's not necessarily enjoyable. So that thing that you're working towards, at least let that be worth it. I guess that's my theme. I'm trying to make it coherent. Does that
Well, it
make
sounded like
sense?
you're, oh yeah, it sounded like you're just extremely self aware. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if there's anything to do with golf. You know, when you're a long enough hitter to go on two and par fives, but is a risk worth it?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to be happy. Like I want to, if I have to spend all these hours towards work and things like that. Like, at least let it be something you enjoy. So when it gets to the point where it's not enjoyable anymore and you know you're going to have to work anyway, at least make that work towards something you like doing.
So now that you're looking back in your career in golf, what are some things that you would have done differently or tell your younger golfer self if you had a chance?
So I guess looking back, and this is something I'm still working on. I know you said like you wish you had my attitude as far as having more fun, but I
Yeah.
was very hard on myself in school to the point where it was not fun and golf didn't become fun and it wasn't enjoyable because I would get so upset with myself when I didn't perform exactly how I wanted to. So I guess that's the advice. Like, if you know you're working hard and you know that you're putting the hours in and practicing, you're going to have variations in performance. That's just the nature of golf. So I guess the advice I would give is that's not great advice when you're in it. Like, oh, don't be so hard on yourself. Because, like, how do you actually not be hard on you? Know the things are high stakes, so I'm gonna be hard on myself. But that is something, looking back now, I wish I realized, like, okay, your value as a person, like, because I would feel bad about myself all day after a bad round, or like for days to come, or if I like didn't do well in a tournament, something I was gearing up for, I would let that seep over into other things outside of golf. And I wish I didn't do that. And I guess the advice I would give is, like, your value as a person is not tied to how well you do in golf. Like, you're still a great person. You're still good at other things. You're still inherently valuable, even if you don't shoot the score, or even if three putted several holes or something like that. Yeah. So you're still valuable, even if you don't always perform how you want.
It's easier now in retrospect because we're older and we have perspective. When you're in it, that's kind of the tunnel vision is what they preach as an athlete, right? Go for the goal, go for number one. And they're right. You should be shooting for the best. But maybe what would have been helpful for me was if I would have put a little life in. So I would have gone for ice cream after a bad round. So it doesn't drill in even more because I implode, right? I did bad and I just like shut myself instead of like, let me just defeat this by doing something normal when I do feel bad so that I know I'm okay. I'm still a human being. Hey, but normal stuff that we kind of didn't, well, at least I didn't practice when I was younger and I wish I kind of did.
Yeah, I agree. Looking back, there are a lot of just social experiences I didn't
Yeah.
have because I was so focused on like competing and playing golf. I'm like, no, I didn't really, unless they were golf friends, I didn't really go out and hang out at the mall or movies or things like that because I was so competitive with golf. So I think that's great. Like, there are other things that, like, throw a little life in there too, throw some more social things in there too.
Random. One of my biggest regret is I live in Florida. I've only been to Disneyland once.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a regret. Next time you come up here, we gotta go.
Oh,
Or, I mean, look, a few years ago, me and my sister, grown adults in our late 20s, we went to Disney World. We can just go. We can just
yeah,
go
we'll
and have
just
fun.
go. I'll be like, overpriced hot dogs, cinnamon roll,
Yeah.
churros. Yeah, I mean, I think that perspective is hard when you're in it because that's all you have, right? You're so young, right? We have transitioned. You kind of grow with the experience.
And I think, honestly, the rule change. And okay, you can make money by like posting and, posting on social media. Like, you can get sponsorships. I think
Yes.
that has helped and made people want to share more and be like, okay, like, literally, there's more opportunity. Anybody can do it. It definitely didn't happen
I'm
until later.
I think you mentioned female athletes not being paid well in the sports scene. That's why you went to law, and I think that's beautiful. Was that
Thanks.
something you just like because of your experience?
Yeah, that happened purely out of the experience because I didn't know any lawyers or anything. And I'm like, oh, this is wild. Like, who makes these decisions? Like, who decides how they get paid? Like, how do they negotiate that? How do they figure that out? Because they need to, whatever it is, they need to make it more.
I never knew that. I thought you wanted to be a lawyer, period. But I didn't never really ask you why.
No, the reason why. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
I'm very touched by the fact that it was through experience that you had the drive to keep going, and now you're one of the few golfers I know in tech. You all successfully finished your law degree, even though you knew kind of you didn't want, but you always followed through. Very a very athlete mindset. Follow through
Gotta
till the finish
finish.
line,
Yeah.
to the 18th hole, and when the last putt dropped, you don't give up till then. Okay, so I have 5 last questions for you, and then I have a question from a previous guest. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Things are gonna work out. I say that like a question. Things are gonna work out. No, let me say it like things are gonna work out.
Okay,
Maybe
got
I
it. Maybe kind of.
know.
Just being
Well,
real.
hopefully.
Maybe.
I hope so.
What is the worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice would be any sort of advice telling me not to try or that it's not possible. Yeah, that's the worst advice.
What is a lesson you learned the hard way?
A lesson I learned the hard way. I guess early tournament experience, lessons I've learned the hard way is how important it is to prepare and what not being prepared, how that does not get you the results that you're looking for. That's a lesson I've learned the hard way. Like going to places or going to things unprepared and then not liking the end result.
What is your hope for female athletes globally?
My hope for female athletes globally is success and opportunity. I would love for female athletes, female golfers, women in golf, or, just golf in general. I would love for it to be more accessible.
So,
Okay.
what is a message you want to leave behind?
So, a message I want to leave behind is that's kind of deep. Ooh, I didn't think you were going to ask me deep questions like this.
Girl, I'll send you this
Something-
question.
You did. I glanced, okay? I glanced at the question. Something I want to leave behind. I guess a message I'd want to leave behind is you can make whatever you want out of life. Like where you come from, your circumstances. Yes, some things will be harder, but there's always someone who's done it. And if there isn't, you can be the first one. You can be the first one to do it. Don't let your circumstances limit what you want to do in life.
The question I have from a recent guest to ask you is, what's your advice on sunscreen?
Wear it. I don't care. Wear it. Like, I don't care what other people say. I don't care what the range. I know there are various skin tones. Like, you should wear sunscreen because you want to stay looking fresh. And, like, look at our skin. Like, you can tell. Like the sun is glistening on me right now, but it's glowing. You don't see not a wrinkle in sight because I wore sunscreen and I still wear sunscreen. Okay. So that's a good ad for sunscreen. Like somebody should sponsor me for that. Look at that.
Okay, people. Do you have a recommended sunscreen? That was the second part of the question.
Ooh, do I? I use Super Goo. Their glow screen. I use that.
So that's all my questions, Shamira. Thank you for your time, Shamira. Some of your stories have really touched me as someone who knew you for a very long time. It's really, really cool to see your whys and how you kind of transition in your own pace. And I'm sure it'll inspire a lot of young women, especially during their transitional phases, whether they do turn pro or not.
Thanks, Karamia.
So thanks for your time, Shamira.
You're so welcome. It was great. It's always great talking to you. So this was awesome.
Shamira's LinkedIn and her information will be linked down below as well. So feel free to give her a shout out and support her amazing career and everything else in between. So thank you, Shamira. See you.
See ya.